Hello and welcome to Cup of Cosmology, the place for all your questions about the universe. My name is Diana Hooper and I'm a postdoctoral researcher currently at the Helsinki Institute of Physics over in Finland, and I'm a cosmologist. So that means that I study the universe, the contents of the universe, how everything evolves, how everything interacts, basically all of the cool things happening inside the universe. It's really a great thing to study. I love being a cosmologist, I love being a scientist, and I love coming here on whichever live streaming platform I'm on the day and chatting to everyone about cosmology, about science, about space, about all the cool things. I was about to say I love being here on HAPS, but I am not on HAPS anymore. HAPS did close down at the beginning of the month. I should be going out to YouTube and to Twitter. If someone's on either of those two platforms, please do say hello, let me know that you're watching. Let me know that the live stream is successfully going out to both YouTube and to Twitter. I'm wondering if there's been a slight issue with the YouTube connection because it's telling me, let me just check if the YouTube connection is working because I know that this is a new setup for me. I'm still figuring things out. Okay, confirmation the YouTube stream is working. Hey, Ange, thanks for being here and thanks for letting me know that YouTube is indeed working. I think there might have been an issue with the notifications today because I don't see too many people coming in from YouTube just yet. But we're going out to YouTube, so that's good. Apologies for any delays here. Hey, Paul. Hey, James. Great to see you both. Thank you for being here. Always nice to see the regulars. So I am on a relatively new setup, as you can see by the branding up here. I am using Restream. I'm still not completely used to Restream, and I'm still figuring things out, so apologies in advance for any technical issues. We'll just take this as we can and try to figure things out currently. But at least it does seem like we are connected to YouTube. We should also be going out to Twitter. Anyone watching on Twitter, if you want to join the conversation, you can just reply to the tweet with the video, and I will get your messages here in Restream as well, or at least I think I will. We can still figure that out. To anyone on YouTube, thanks for being here. Great to see you. Thank you for coming back if you're a regular. Welcome if it's your first time here. And I'm still not in the habit of doing this, but if you like this video, please do remember to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment down below. This is how my streams are going to grow. And now that HAPS is closed down, I do need to get more followers coming in. Hey, David Howden, great to see you as well. And Kumar, very nice to see you too. Great to see everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's always so nice to see people here, to have people to chat to. It's always great to have people just come by and chat to me or to listen to me rambling about science and space and cosmology. So as always, this is an interactive stream, so you can ask me anything you want. Today's topic is kind of vague, like let's talk about science. It's pretty open. Basically, you can ask me anything you want and I will do my best to answer. There are some things I do want to talk about today, but in general, this is an ask me anything. This is a live stream. This is interactive. You can ask me anything you want and I will try my best to answer. So as I was saying just now, I'm a theoretical physicist, specifically I'm a cosmologist, and I'm currently a postdoc over at the University of Helsinki in the Helsinki Institute of Physics. So I always say casually, I'm a postdoc. And I realized again recently that postdoc is maybe something that not everyone is familiar with. It's one of those nice academic jargon terms. So being a postdoc means that I'm kind of in the in-between stage between being a PhD student and being, hopefully one day, a professor. Means I'm on short-term 2 to 3 year contracts, which means I frequently change country and change groups. And technically, you do a couple of postdocs, 3, 4 postdocs, and then hopefully you might get a permanent position. Now, it always has the problem that there are too many PhDs, too many postdocs, not enough professorship positions. But when I say I'm a postdoc, it means I'm in the fun stage in between where I still have some responsibilities, but not as many as a professor, where I'm starting to really flesh out my CV with the objective of becoming a professor one day. So a question from Paul here, are you supervising any PhD students? Currently, I am not. I am supervising bachelor, I am co-supervising bachelor and master students. I have supervised both bachelor and master students in the past. I chat to a lot of PhD students, but I'm not officially in charge of a PhD student yet. I think you actually need to be a professor to kind of be in charge of a PhD student or supervising a PhD student. You should never be in charge of people. You're just supervising or assisting. But currently I am not supervising any PhD students, but I am supervising bachelor or co-supervising bachelor and master students, and soon a summer student as well. Your favorite cosmology show, or your favorite YouTube show? Thank you, Paul. Rohit Paul, that's very nice of you to say. It's very nice of you to say that this is your favorite show. Have you had a lot of coffees today? Am I speaking fast? Am I being hyper? Honestly, I have actually only had one coffee today, and it was like early in the morning. I'm just hyper today. But no, no, I am hyper because I have a whole trip coming up in a few days. Hey, Abyss, I can indeed see you. Great to see you, Abyss. Thank you for joining on over on YouTube as well. So nice to see you here. There was a comment here by David Howden. In the natural history world, there is a strong amateur citizen science tradition. How much is cosmology just done by professionals, and how much can others contribute? I love that question, David. So, science is a collaborative process, and this is something I want to talk about a lot today. Oh, the problem with citizen science is a really cool idea where people in the public can just help out with doing science. Sometimes it's in some disciplines this is easier than in others. Now the problem with cosmology is it's quite hard to like go wandering the world and find a universe to play about with. So in terms of citizen science with cosmology, it's quite difficult, but there are some initiatives. Now, hey, David Dunn, great to see you as well. I'm sorry that I was speaking fast at the beginning. I know I'm hyper. I will try to slow myself down. I know that I'm not as fast as I used to be, but I will try to slow myself down. Thank you for pointing out that I was a bit hyper there. I just need to remember to breathe sometimes. So, citizen science projects are really cool. In fact, there was one that I participated in during my undergrad, which was really fun, which was about finding planets. I believe it's still ongoing. It's the Planet Hunters. With the Planet Hunters, you can help process some light curves. So there's light curves which show you potential planets passing or objects passing in front of other stars. And you can look at these light curves and flag them as like this looks like it might be a planet, or this looks like it might be this other thing. And if you flag a planet, you actually get mentioned in the paper as well, as all of these citizens helped us find this planet. It's pretty cool. Now, there is one cosmology citizen program which is called Cosmology at Home. And the idea of cosmology at home is one thing we do need to do a lot of in cosmology is running simulations. We need to do a lot of computing. Usually, this involves big machines. We usually try to run on servers. Now, the idea of cosmology at home is to get if you just have your computer at home and you're currently not using it, you can volunteer your computer to be used by cosmologists. So then what a cosmologist might do is set up a code and a computer simulation that can run on any machine. You kind of put it in a Docker container. For anyone who knows what a Docker container is, it's basically a self-contained container that has everything that you need to run your program. And people like myself, cosmologists, might request time on this cosmology at home, and anyone in the world can come in and say, okay, my computer is idle for the next 3 hours. It has this many cores. Go ahead, I'm not using it. So then you can go off, get dinner, go for a walk, do whatever. You just leave your computer on, connect it to the internet. And a cosmologist might, if you volunteer for this, I'm not saying we're randomly dropping into people's computers. If you sign up for this, then cosmologists can use your computers. You can get it back at any point as soon as you like move the mouse. You can set it up that as soon as you move your mouse, the code goes away to some other computer. And this is quite a nice system because it's a way of just you leave your computer idle doing nothing, and it does some science with some cosmologists. So this is cosmology at home. Personally, I don't use it just because most of my codes are not yet on Docker. They probably should be. They're not really Docker friendly. I should make them Docker friendly, but it is a really nice idea, and that's the only cosmology related citizen from home project that comes to mind right now. So citizen science, sorry, cosmology at home. But I think there are a couple of others, but this is the one that comes to mind now. So this is one that if you're interested in collaborating to cosmology, you should look for Cosmology at Home Citizen Science, and you can find this. But I know in other fields it's easier to do. Like I believe in insect identification. It's very easy to ask people like take photos of your insects and help us identify species. So I know in a lot of different fields there are more citizen science projects, and this is the only one I know of in cosmology, but I think there might be others. And I know I missed a couple of comments there. Is raw data, LHC, telescopes, etc., generally available if a citizen scientist wanted to analyze it? It very much depends on the data. Usually, data has to be made public, like all NASA data needs to be made public, all ESA data needs to be made public. What there usually is a moratorium period, so a period where only the people who have developed the codes or worked on the data have access to it. Because usually, if you're waiting for data from a telescope, you might have put years of work into it. It makes sense that you have like dibs. You have a first try at the data if you're part of the collaboration who spent years getting the data. So it's often the case that for maybe 1, maybe 2 years, the data is private, and only the scientists who contributed to obtaining the data have access to it. But usually, the data is made public after a while. Most NASA missions do have to make their data public. For an example, all of the data for the Planck Space Telescope, which looked at the cosmic microwave background, all of this data is publicly available and anyone can play about with it. I'm not sure what the policy is with LHC data, to be honest. I think some of it is public, but I'm not completely sure. I think it should be public as well, actually. But it very much depends on the experiments. But generally, you have this 1 or 2 year waiting period where the people involved in the mission get first refusal. And I know you all have great questions today. I will catch up with them. David asked me how I am. Thank you for asking that. I am good. Very, very tired, very much in need of a break, but I will take a break in a few days. I am good. A lot of stuff going on, but I am good. Planet Hunter sounds like something straight out of science fiction. It does. Like, I am a planet hunter. I participated in the planet hunting thing when I was in my undergrad. It was super cool. We've done SETI at home before, so the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. That is cool. And protein folding. Protein folding is also cool. So there are a lot of amazing citizen science projects you can do. If you've never heard of citizen science, you can just really Google citizen science projects and find one that's interesting for you, because there's a lot of them out there, and there's a lot of them that are really, really cool to use and to play about with. So I'm amused by Paul's comment. You're doing folding laundry at home. Is that the same thing? I don't think it's the same as protein folding, but you're folding something. Question just jumped. Lots of questions. Question from Rohit Paul. Should I do a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in physics, or should I do engineering? Which one will you recommend to a final year sophomore? I love that question. I love that question because it leads me into what I want to talk about today. So what I want to talk about today is science and academia in general. Just see a comment here. LHC data is enormous even for citizen scientists. That's why there was a heavy investment on the information exchange. Yes. Usually a lot of these experiments have so many, just such a huge amount of data that you can't load up all of the data, but you can load up small fragments of it. So should I do a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD in physics? Now, I think the answer to that question is depends what you want to do, and depends why you are doing it. So I think physics is amazing. I think science is amazing. I also think the process to become a scientist is not as nice as we would like it to be. Now, it is not a walk in the park. It is not a breeze. And there's also something that is not talked about enough, that if your objective is purely, I'm going to get a PhD to become a professor, it's very important to know that 95% of people who have a bachelor's in physics do not end up being a professor. And the reason for this is, but when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You might have one professor who trains 3 to 4 postdocs every 5 years. Maybe over their career, they train 10 postdocs. Then maybe over their career, they train 20 PhD students, or they supervise 20 PhD students, they supervise 10 postdocs in a 15-year period, for an example, or even in a 20-year period. And they might also take on a bunch of master students and bachelor students. But all of these people are basically competing to replace that one professor. So if you go in, I know a lot of people who go into physics with the idea of, I will get a bachelor's, I will get a master's, I will get a PhD, I will become a professor, this is my career path. And while that is a great career path to have, and this is what I want to do, it is important to know that it is not a given, that getting a bachelor's does not guarantee that one day you will be a professor. Getting a PhD does not guarantee that one day you will be a professor. However, if you want to be a professor at a university, doing amazing research and teaching people, then yes, get a bachelor's, get a master's, get a PhD. But also, if that's not your final goal, it's also interesting to do, because there's a lot of things you can do with a PhD in physics. Like, really, there is so many things you can do with a PhD in physics. I know people who work ONGs, doing data science. I know people who have switched into medical physics. I know people who work at banks. I know people who work in the IT business. And having a PhD in physics basically means you have a PhD in problem solving and in analytical skills. And these are things that are well sought after. Even having a PhD in like theoretical cosmology, which seems like it might not have any real world applications, gives you a PhD in problem solving, in knowing how to relate concepts and knowing how to present your work, how to interact with people. And this is all stuff that is a transferable skill. So I think doing a bachelor's, doing a master's, doing a PhD is absolutely worth it. And it is fun, and it is also difficult and challenging. And there will be days where you will question all your life choices, but it is fun to do, it is worth doing. And I think it's important to go in knowing that it is not a guarantee that you will end up as a professor, but that is not the only thing to do with your PhD. And I think it's important to know this in advance, to know that it is not going to be an easy journey, that most people who start a bachelor's do not reach it to a professor, but that is perfectly fine. It is in no way a failure to leave after your PhD. You do not have to commit yourself to academia for your whole life. And this is something that also needs emphasizing, because a lot of people in academia will tell you that you go in, you get a PhD to become a professor. And it's not true. You get a PhD to become an expert in a topic. You get a PhD in physics to become an expert in physics, in one specific subfield of physics. That does not mean you have to be married to academia for the rest of your life. Walking away from something is always an option. And I just want to catch up on some messages, because I stopped scrolling at some point, and I know there are some messages I'm missing out on here. Zooniverse is another citizen science project I've heard of. Yeah, the Planet Hunters, I believe, is actually on the Zooniverse. So Zooniverse, like Zoo Universe. And under there's a lot of sub-projects, and the Planet Hunting one was a sub one of the Zooniverse. I think Zooniverse hosts multiple projects. Yes, exactly. Doesn't work on iPad. Someone saying, become Deanna's intern. I'm currently not hiring an intern, but I know a comment from Abyss. I know a few people who actually did their postdoc in cosmology, and now they're on a completely different career path, which is perfectly fine, such as data science and machine learning. Yeah, getting on tenure track might be tough. Getting on tenure track is tough. And that's a thing, that a PhD does not equal becoming a professor one day, nor should it. Getting a PhD in physics is not a one-way ticket to professorship, but it does open so many doors. So the question was, should I get a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD? Start with the bachelor's. If you like it, maybe decide for a master's. If you still like it, maybe go for the PhD. But you can walk away at any point. You can get a bachelor's, you can stop. You can get a master's, you can stop. You can get 1 year into your PhD and say, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm walking away. And that is perfectly fine. And a lot of people in academia and a lot of people in science will try to convince you that leaving means failing. And this is something that I am very strongly against. Leaving, walking away from something for whatever reason, is sometimes the best decision for you. And doing what's right for you is not a failure. Okay, let me just catch up on comments here. You remember those days of questioning my choice of doing a PhD? We all do. We all do. Again, this is something that I think needs to be talked about more. So there's the idea. I promised myself I wouldn't rant too much today, so we'll see how I do about this. So questioning your decision to do a PhD is something I think we all go through at some point. And it's something that some people don't like talking about. And some people will give the idea of like, I've always known that I was set to be a professor. It's like, well done. Congratulations. I very much doubt that. I sincerely doubt that. Doing a PhD is difficult. It is very much not an easy thing. If it was easy, everyone would do it. It's not an easy thing. You don't go into a PhD because it's easy. There are a lot of problems with the way academia is currently structured. I think the current numbers are that 1/3 of PhD students are suffering from either depression or anxiety. Now, academia is a highly competitive place. You know that all of you are fighting to replace that one professor. And that combined, so the lack of long-term job security combined with working on a very difficult topic, it's very easy to get stuck. Almost everyone I know deals with imposter syndrome at varying levels. So all of these things are things that contribute to the idea that, doing a PhD is not easy. And doing a PhD is not for everyone. And if you get 2 years into your PhD and realize it's not for you, you've got 2 years of experience under your belt. You've got 2 years of learning how to do things, of problem solving, of developing new skills. And if after 1, 2, 3, 4 years you want to walk away from your PhD, that is fine. That is always, always, always an option. And I think every single person who's still in academia asks themselves at some point, is this what I want to do? And that's a question that is an individual one, and only you can answer this really. You did a postdoc for 3.5 years before becoming a community college professor. Yeah. I think that is lower than average. I know people who have spent 7 or 8 years as postdocs. Being a postdoc is cool. You get some responsibility, but not too much. You get to learn new things. You still have some independence, but not so much. But being a postdoc means you don't have long-term job security. Being a postdoc means it's highly likely that you're going to have to change job 2, 3 years down the line. You might have to change country. You might have to uproot your life again. Now, I am currently in my sixth country. I'm on my second postdoc. I have moved around a lot. And currently, I'm on a contract that is for 3 years, which means my future is only guaranteed currently. My future in academia is only guaranteed for 2.5 years. I know people who have done 10 years of postdoc, didn't get tenure, and then decided, you know what, I'm done, I'm leaving. And this is perfectly fine. If you leave after 1 year, if you leave after 10, if you leave during your PhD, it is always, always, always fine. It is always a valid option. And you say here, David, it took you 3.5 years as a postdoc. Yeah, I am 3 years into, well, 2.5 years into my postdoc life. I expect I will still be a postdoc for at least 1 or 2 more years. I have big hopes of getting big grants, so do a lot of people. So, yeah, being a postdoc is tough, and it's something that we should acknowledge before going into it. We need to be aware of the fact that being a postdoc is tough. We need to be aware of the fact that not everybody is going to become a professor. I've also heard quite a few people say if you're going to leave academia, it doesn't make sense to do a postdoc. And I strongly disagree with this statement as well. There is no one size fits all. Here is the optimum career path. This is something that everyone chooses for themselves. Doing a postdoc might mean you get to experience a new country, a new group, a new research topic, new ideas. You might learn new skills. You might discover during your second, third postdoc that you want to leave academia, and that is perfectly fine. So I've been told many, many times that if I want to leave academia, I should do it after my PhD, and that starting a postdoc means a lifetime commitment trying to get to be a professor, and that's bullshit. Walking away from something, if it's too much for you, if it's just not what you want to do with your life, walking away is always an option. You're trying to figure out your life now, going to college in 1 year. Well, congratulations on wanting to go to college. That is cool. This is something that you really have to decide for yourself. And I would say if you're not sure, go for it. Give it a go. Start your bachelor's in physics. See if you fall in love with a specific topic. See if you want to continue. Get I think the place where you really start to know if you want to do this is when you do your first research project, when you start working with people who are doing science or doing day-to-day research. That's when you start thinking, okay, is this something I want to do? So absolutely go to college, enjoy it, get the most out of it, have fun. Ignore the people who tell you that your college years are the best years of your life, because they are not the best years of your life. The best years of my life are probably currently, to be honest. But it was definitely not during my undergrad. Absolutely not during my undergrad. Some people will tell you college is where you discover yourself. Don't let people set that out for you. Go have fun, enjoy yourself, make the most out of it. You don't have to have your whole life planned out the day you start college. You can go to college and figure it out as you go. And it's always okay to change your mind, to decide, actually, this is not for me. It is always okay to not know what you want to do with your life. I don't know if you know her, but there's a YouTuber with a handle Typey. She quit her PhD to do YouTube videos on physics and mathematics. That sounds awesome. If you're going to quit your PhD and do something you love, sure, I am all for it. Comment from Paul: look for colleges where people are doing cool things, research or whatever your interest is, and where there are undergrads can participate and get real world learning. I agree with everything you're saying there, Paul. I was also message from David. I was also a researcher in the summer for several years after getting my teaching job, which was fun. Yeah, doing research is fun, teaching is fun, doing both together is really fun. Undergrad was not kind to me as well. I completely agree with you, Abyss. I lost myself in college from James. Yeah, I think left college, university years ago, still not decided what I want to do when I grow up. That's perfectly fine. Having a life plan is good. It gives you certainty. Life plans have a tendency to change. Life has a tendency to throw stuff at you when you're not ready for it. And I had my whole life plan figured out when I was 17. I was going to become a forensic scientist. Then I suddenly discovered that that was actually very much not what I wanted to do with my life. Oh, then I went into physics and decided that for now, this is what I want to do with my life. But someday that might change. For now, this is what I'm happy with. It's always, to me, it's always a game of pros and cons. There are good things and bad things about everything in life. And while the good things outnumber the bad things, it is worth doing. And of course, there might be times where you have a bad day, and that's fine, because if overall the good things are winning, it's worth doing. And sometimes you might realize that it's no longer worth your time. And then there's the time investment fallacy of, oh, I've spent 3 years on this, I should stick with it. No, you spent 3 years on it. Why spend another three on it? If you're not happy, you should walk away. And this is the thing that I think these conversations should be more out in the public. And one of the reasons I have this show, one of the reasons I do Cup of Cosmology is to demystify science. And I think this is an important conversation to have as well, because there's a lot of things people think about science that are not true, or about being a scientist. And this whole idea of like, oh, you have to be committed, you have to know your whole life plan when you start, you have to want to become a professor, or you failed out of academia. This is nonsense. Life will change, you will change. I am not the person I was 10 years ago. I am not the person I was 3 years ago. A lot has happened in the last few years. God, a lot has happened in the last few years for everyone, I think. And it's okay to change your mind. And there's also the thing like, oh, I've always wanted to do this, now I have to know. You really don't. You really, really don't. This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, about academia, about why we do it, about why some people stay and some people don't. And just in case anyone is thinking that I'm about to drop a bombshell here that I'm leaving, I'm not leaving academia anytime soon. Let's just make that clear. I want to become a professor. Currently, this is my life plan, my goal for now. This might easily change one day. I might fall in love with some random other thing someday. There's always what you plan, and then there's what actually happens, and those two don't always overlap, and that is perfectly fine. But a lot of people I know have left academia in the last year. A lot of people I know are currently thinking about leaving academia. And I really understand it. I do. There's a lot of issues with academia. I'm not going to go into it today because, you've all heard me do my occasional rants about academia. And if I wanted to talk about all of the negatives about academia, we'd be here for ages. But there's also a lot of positives. And I want to talk about the thing that I like the most about being a scientist. Because I've had a few events recently that have really reminded me of what I like about being a scientist and why academia for me is the place I want to be. Despite everything, despite all of the many, many, many issues with academia, this is where I am happy. And there's a lot of reasons. There's really a lot. We can talk about the joy of discovery, about understanding new concepts, about learning new things. And all of these things are cool, about battling with a problem and bashing your head against the wall for months and then solving it. This is an amazing feeling. But the thing I like the most about being a scientist is doing science with other people. Because science is a collaborative process. And some people will tell you that it's not, that it's a competition, that you have to be the first to do something and you do it alone. And that is absolute nonsense. A lot of people have this idea of the lone genius scientist, the next Einstein. Einstein was supported by a team of people, and general relativity was a collaborative effort, despite what we might think. Science is collaborative. Science is about the people doing science. It is not, for me personally, it is not about being the first to do something. It is not about having my name attached to some grand discovery. It is about the process. It is about understanding things together. And I think having a good group of people to do science with is what makes science worth doing. And I know I'm going to get all sappy here of the real journeys, the friends we made along the way. I'm not intentionally doing that. So, throughout the pandemic, we've been able to continue our work, but obviously remotely. A lot of us have been working from home. And we can still do the meetings, we can still have conversations, we can just switch everything online compared to other jobs. We had it very easy. But there's one big thing that's been missing, and it's the occasional coffee break conversations or the being stuck on a project, on a problem, and just knocking on your colleague's door, like, hey, do you have a minute? And just chatting things, discussing things, bouncing ideas back and forth. And this is something that I really missed during the pandemic. And I think a lot of people have as well. And I think not going to conferences, not doing yeah, not going to conferences, not having these coffee break conversations, not having as many chances to chat to people has really been an issue for a lot of people. This is one for me. This is one of the best things about science, about being in academia. And when this has been taken away for the last couple of years, I can understand why for a lot of people academia is no longer worth it. Because one of the we get to travel a lot with our job. We probably travel too much given the climate crisis, but that's a whole other rant for another day. We get to travel a lot, we get to meet amazing people, and this was cut out completely during the last 2 years for everyone. And by no means am I saying that scientists had it worse than anyone else. Absolutely not. Scientists were extremely privileged to be able to just switch things online, and this is something we need to acknowledge. And I by no means want to downplay anyone else's struggles during the pandemic. But taking away this collaborative nature of the last few years has taken away one of the best things in the field for me personally. And I can see why a lot of people are now seeing more of the negative aspects of academia, because there are really a lot of negative aspects. And I think the pandemic has made them even worse. The fact that I don't get to see my family much, this is something that is just part of me living abroad. And this is something that during the pandemic and during the last few years, for whatever reason, a lot of people have realized just how much they miss that. And I get that. How much they miss just having that community. I've uprooted my life 5 times now. I've moved country 5 times. And every time you lose a part of yourself along the way, you find new things, it's new adventures. But I can understand why for a lot of people, this is not the right path anymore. But now we're gradually getting back to in-person things. And a couple of weeks, I should catch up on comments, so it's not just me monologuing here. I'm super glad that for you, part of the process is sharing your knowledge and love of science. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, sharing science is the amazing part of science. I would not want to do this alone. I would not want to do science without people to talk to and without everyone to tell about. I mean, what's the point of discovering something if you can't share it with people? Hope you still find something in cosmology we can call the Hooper effect. Maybe someday. Hooper plus all the collaborators who worked on it. Yeah. Maybe when I'm a professor one day and I have a group of people under me, it can be like the group. But yeah, science is not an individual endeavor. It's really not. I agree, me personally, working from home is devastating to me. Interaction is necessary for efficiency. Yeah. And I think this is true in a lot of jobs. A lot of jobs can be done remotely, but that part of interaction is missing. This is why personally I think hybrid work is the way to go for me. For a lot of people, working from home is the best solution, and that's completely fine. For me personally, hybrid is the way to go. I like the freedom of saying, like today, I just feel like working from home. There are some days where you just don't want to deal with people for whatever reasons. And some days you're just more efficient working from home. But I like having the option. Currently, what I'm doing is like 2 or 3 days in the office and 2 or 3 days at home. Usually, honestly, depends on what food is available at my university canteen. And then I decide based on food if I'm going in the office or staying at home. I'm very food driven. But I like having the option of some days at home, some days in the office with people. A couple of weeks ago, I had my first in-person conference in 2.5 years. It was very scary because of COVID. The pandemic is not over, despite what people might want you to believe. We were all very careful. We all took tests the day of the conference. We all wore our masks. And as far as I know, nobody got infected at the conference. We caught a couple in the morning with a quick test, but nobody got infected at the conference, as far as I know. I didn't at least. And being back in person, just chatting with people, having these conversations was amazing. I was there as one of the invited speakers at this conference. I gave a talk. It was fun. I like giving talks. But then afterwards, we had conversations, and this conference brought together practical physicists, cosmologists, people working on the same topic, but from multiple different angles. And we were having discussion sessions, just bouncing ideas back and forth. And I wasn't even involved in all of the discussions, just watching people have these conversations reminded me of just how much I like talking to other scientists and listening to what other scientists have to say. And now this past week, my month has been crazy, but this past week, from Tuesday and Wednesday, my local group went on a retreat, which is like 15 people in the group, the people who work closest together. We went to like a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere in the forest with a lake. It was really, really remote, really amazing. There was saunas, very Finnish. There was amazing food. And I know we were doing a nice mix of relaxing and working, and there were so many interesting science conversations going on, even about things that I don't really care about so much in terms of the topic, but just being there and having these conversations and chatting to people. I was at this retreat and I was reminded again, as despite all of the problems about academia, despite all of the issues, which I hope one day to help improve however much I can, despite all of the bad things, being here, being part of this conversation is a privilege. Just having these people around me to chat to about these amazing topics is incredible. That there, that is what keeps me going with the job, those moments. And this is just this collaborative effort is really important both to scientists and to science itself. Coming from to do a few more talks here, I got rejected for cosmology summer school at ICTP. I'm sorry to hear that, and conferences can be very competitive. It's sometimes the case that there's just not enough room for everyone, and unfortunately, people get rejected, and it's shitty. And I'm sorry that that happened. I hope you apply to another summer school because it's normal to get rejected from conferences. This is something else in academia. We should absolutely normalize rejection because it happens a lot. It really does happen a lot. My first batch of applying for postdocs, I got a lot of rejection. My first time applying for PhDs, I got a lot of rejections. And my first and only time applying for PhDs. I very recently, or last year, I did another round of postdoc applications. Was it last year? No, it was 2 years ago. When was it? Oh God, time is strange. I last did my postdoc applications in 2020. Yes, I got rejections there as well, and I'm going to apply for grants this year, and I am very sure I'm going to get rejected from at least one of them. Like, there's one that there's no way I'm going to get. I'm applying anyway, but rejection is a natural part of academia, and it's also a problem when not going into advance, but we do have a tendency in academia because of this idea of you have to stay in academia, you have to be a professor, you have to love your job with every ounce of your being. We tie our self-worth to our job, and this is wrong. And then when rejections come, we take it personally instead of just a statement on, there were people who are further along in their career who have done more, and this is not a personal statement about you. So you got rejected from a summer school. Please do not feel discouraged. This happens to us all. I would just say apply again next year. Apply to other places. Rejection is unfortunately part of academia, and something we just have to learn to deal with. Took me some time to go outside without mask and irregularly interacting with people. Yeah, the pandemic is not over. I get that people are tired of it. I get that people have had enough, but the pandemic is not over, and the virus is not going to listen to us saying that the virus is gone. I still wear a mask pretty much every time I leave the house. Obviously, if I'm out at a conference, I kept my mask on the entire time, except when I gave my talk, because with the microphone and everything, the mask just wasn't working for me. But I tried to keep my mask on as much as possible. And going back to interacting with people in person was fun because it's a thing of I completely forgotten how to socialize. I'm not going to go in the fact that I've already overthought every conversation I've had in the last week with everybody and realize, like, oh my God, I said so many stupid things. We completely forget how to interact with people. Lockdowns have had a big psychological effect. I think the impact of this virus is something we're going to feel for generations. For it is a humanity shaping event, and some people don't want to accept that. But yeah, feeling reluctant to leave the house without a mask is nothing to be in any way ashamed of. I still masks are no longer mandatory on planes. I will not take my mask off on public transport. No, thank you. But I get that people have had enough. I really do. I don't think the pandemic is over, and we need to acknowledge the fact that science tells us that the pandemic is not over. But it is definitely difficult going back to in-person events. After the conference, we went out to a conference dinner in Munich, and I was so worried. I was so sure. Like, we were out at a restaurant, and I was looking around like, someone in this restaurant is going to give me COVID. I was so worried. I took a quick test every day for like 10 days after that conference because I was so worried about it. Like, every day, just quick test, quick test. I tested negative, which was also reassuring because I went out to dinner and nothing bad happened. So maybe I don't need to be as paranoid as I have been the last 2.5 years, but also everyone needs to do whatever is reasonable for their own comfort level. Okay, so back to the topic I am talking about today. So these moments, both at the conference and at the retreat this week, of chatting to people about their science, about watching people have these conversations, reminded me of just how much of a collaborative effort science really is, and how fun it is to be part of the process. And then that leads me into the other thing that, of course, chatting to scientists is amazing, it's great. Now comes the problem of what happens with all the assholes in science, because as everywhere, there are some people who you'd rather not just be part of the conversation. There are some people who you don't think should be included because they might have very, let's say, outdated ideas about certain things. And that is a polite way of phrasing that. And as you progress more and more in your career, you have the opportunity to choose who you work with. There are people I have worked with in the past as a PhD student, as a master's student, who I would not work with again now, given the choice. And this is one of the nice things, that as you move forward, you get to choose more and more who you work with. Currently, I'm in a place where I'm very happy with the group of people I work with, and having these conversations is really, really fun. Going back to the idea of doing a bachelor, doing a master's, doing a PhD, I get asked often for advice in picking a place to do a master's, or picking a place to do a PhD, or even picking a place to do a postdoc. And if you'd asked me this 5 years ago, 6, maybe 10 years ago, I would have said, choose the place where the research interests you the most. And I no longer agree with that statement. I think you should choose the place. If you're going into academia or anywhere in general, you should choose the place where you feel like you can have these collaborative conversations, where you can be part of this conversation, part of this process. Because the people you work with are more important than the research topic, for me personally. Because if the people are cool, if you're part of these conversations, even if it's a topic you don't really care about, you will get interested in it. And sometimes I hear people talking about things like holography, which is something I've never wanted to work on in my life. But you hear these conversations and these people are discussing it in such a way that's like, you know what, this is pretty interesting, actually. So I think it's much more important to choose a group where you can have these conversations, where you can be yourself, and where you can really enjoy science. And it's not so much about the topic that you're working on. For me, it's much more about the people I'm working with. I put the somewhere in the YouTube description, there's the thing of what keeps me going in academia, and it's really having these conversations and being part of this process. And this is what I think science should be about. And there are a bunch of people who will tell you that it's competitive, that you have to be the best, you have to be the first, you have to be the only one, that you have to have better grades than other people. And I don't think so. I think you just need to be able to have these conversations and to bring your ideas and to listen to other people's ideas. And this takes me to something else, that we know is an issue in academia, that academia is not diverse enough. Academia is largely dominated by old, white, cishet men, as is a lot of things. But this is a problem because when we have these conversations, when we're discussing together about how to solve a problem, you're not going to solve a problem if everyone in the room has the same opinion, if everyone in the room has the same background. In order to solve problems, you need a diversity of opinions, you need a diversity of perspectives. And you only get this diversity of perspectives if you have a diverse group of people discussing a problem. And I think, for a lot of reasons, academia should be more diverse because it's a morally correct thing to do, because it's the right thing to do, because it's the way the world should work. It doesn't, but it should be. But also because science itself benefits from more diverse opinions, from more diverse people. And we owe it to science, we owe it to this field that we love so much to tackle it properly. And that requires a diversity of people and a diversity of opinions. And I think this is something that we will gradually change, not fast enough. I was at a one-day event on Friday celebrating the 25-year anniversary of the Helsinki Institute of Physics, and there were four speakers back to back who were white men in their 60s. And it's like, I'm sure there is someone who is not an old white man who could give one of these talks. We do need this diversity of opinion to make these conversations more meaningful and to make the science happen. And before I go off too much on this tangent, there's some comments to catch up with. Comment from James: have you seen any significant difference between University of Finland as opposed to other places? So judging a whole university is difficult. What I can judge is the current research group I'm in, and I absolutely love my current research group. It is one of the friendliest and most open research groups I've ever been in, and we're having these conversations, and also the conversations that I'm having today about academia, about what science is. And I really, really, really like my research group currently. And it's hard to compare the whole university because I'm sure in the wider group there are people I wouldn't like working with. But that's the same in every country. But currently, I'm in the research group that I've enjoyed being a part of the most, which means that currently I'm enjoying my experience in academia a lot more than I have in other places. So I don't think I can really compare the University of Finland as a whole. It very much depends on the individual research group and the people that you're working with. Currently, I'm really enjoying my time here. So have I seen any significant difference? Yeah, honestly, I have. It's also coming here just as the pandemic as things are opening up, as we're able to meet in person again. I'm really enjoying it here. I'm actually working on a chatbot with computer vision to potentially diagnose a person's mental health. That sounds absolutely amazing, Abyss. I would love to know more about that. I will ask you more about that because that sounds absolutely amazing. Do you look for generally good people or specific things like respecting each other's opinions? So this is individual. This is, again, what you might need for your own personal well-being. Now, personally, what I like when I was applying for postdocs, one thing that was important to me was how much mental health was acknowledged and taken care of in a specific research group, because I have struggled with my mental health in academia. I'm very open about this now. There was a time where I had a burnout, where I was so close to walking away from academia, so very close to walking away. And I've struggled a lot with my mental health, and the last 2 years have been brutal for everyone. So for me, an important thing, and one of the questions I asked in interviews for postdocs was, what's kind of the group approach to mental health? But this very much depends. Obviously, I think people should respect each other, listen to each other, and respect everyone else's opinion. And I wouldn't want to work in a group where that's not the case. So this very much depends on you individually. So I say, it's good to have people you can work with, and that depends on how you work and what for you is important. But I think it's important to be in a group where you match the overall vibe, where you're all on the same kind of idea about how to approach science. Because if people have clashing ideas, if you're in a group where you want to be collaborative and everyone else in the group is competitive and individualistic, it's not going to work for anyone. So this is what worked for me personally, but this is, again, an individual decision of what works for you in science. I always say I want to work with bright people who disagree with me. No point if we all agree. I agree that having disagreements about science is good. I don't want to work with people who disagree with me about basic fundamental rights, But I want to work with people who disagree with me about science because then we can talk about these things and have these conversations. If you all come from exactly the same perspective with exactly the same opinion, it's going to be a stagnant conversation very quickly. Glad I'm enjoying myself in Helsinki. Thank you, David. Walking on the frozen ocean is significant. I am not over that. I know, I will keep going on about this. The ocean, the sea froze over in winter. I walked on the frozen sea. It was incredible. I will not get over that. Also, I mentioned the research group because that's what we're talking about. But in general, I've completely fallen in love with Finland. It is an amazing country. I went swimming in a lake that was about 5 degrees this week. That was a fun experience. I've now done my first Finnish sauna as well, also a fun experience. But in general, I just absolutely love the country. Also, it has the best cinnamon buns. One thing that I find extremely amusing about Finland. Now, just want to say that I am absolutely saying this from a place of complete respect and admiration for Finland. And every country has its quirks. And one fun quirk about Finland is that Finnish people are slightly obsessed with oats and porridge to the point that if you go to the supermarket, there's like 500 different types of porridge. I just want porridge. I don't care which one. No, there's like 500 types. It's a big decision. There was a very funny thing on Friday. There was a one-day conference. There were actually two one-day conferences going on. I went to a bit of both. And in one of the conferences, we got to the first coffee break of the day, and we were told, there might be food outside. There usually is coffee break snack. And the food at the coffee break was porridge. Like there was a big heated plate there, a heated bowl full of porridge. There were berries, there was sugar for the topping. And this was served at like the coffee break. To me, this is not coffee break food, this is breakfast. But it just felt like so quintessential Finnish to be offered porridge at a coffee break. I loved it. Anyway, this was a complete separate tangent there, just because I was so amused on Friday at finding porridge at the conference coffee break. It just made me laugh so much. Have I seen the Northern Lights? I have not actually seen them yet. Apparently, they were visible one day in Helsinki since I've been here, and it was at like midnight, and I was sleeping. And the next morning, I saw people sharing images and was very sad that I missed it. I hope to see it someday. At some point, I'm going to travel further north in Finland and go up to the Arctic Circle and look for the Northern Lights. I haven't seen them yet, but I very much hope I will see them at some point soon. So, usually on this program, I talk about new stuff in cosmology or fun things in cosmology, about black holes last week, about dark matter. You've all heard me talk about dark matter so much. But lately, I've really been thinking a lot about academia. And you've all heard me on the show complain about academia at length and about multiple topics in academia. And I wanted today to offer a different perspective. It's important to discuss the problems in academia, and someday maybe I will do that. I have got the app that gives me alerts. I muted it at some point because it was sending me alerts. It sent me an alert at 3 o'clock in the morning that woke me up one day, and then I muted it. And now I've unmuted it again. Now it's not giving me any alerts because it doesn't get dark here currently. It's so strange. The sun is going down at like 10 past 10. The sun is coming up at 4:30 in the morning. My body has no idea what time of the day it is. It's confusing. We don't get astronomical night. It's definitely an adjustment to the amount of light I'm getting here. Anyway, I do think it's important to have conversations about all of the bad things in academia, and someday I will do a stream all about just me ranting for an hour about academia. Someday, when I can properly. But I think it's important also to talk about these things, that getting a PhD is not the thing you do only to become a professor. Getting a PhD is a tool that you choose how to use it. I think it's important to talk about the fact that it's always okay to walk away from academia, and that committing to a master's degree, to a PhD, to a bachelor's now is not a lifelong commitment, and it's okay to walk away at any point. And I really do understand why people are walking away from academia. And it's made me once again really sit down and think about why I'm staying in academia. And the thing I come back to is it's not about, so the individual feeling of discovery is great, and all of the knowing things that you might be the first group of people to know is great, but it's really the process of finding these things out together, having these conversations, sitting in a room with incredibly smart people, feeling very imposter, like why the hell am I in this room with all these smart people, and hearing these conversations and joining these conversations, realizing that you actually do know what you're talking about sometimes, at least a small fraction of the time. It's just this whole process, the scientific discovery process, for me, is collaborative. It has to be collaborative, it has to be diverse, and it has to be something that we do to understand things together, not to be the first, not to be the best, not to be the next big deal, not to get some particle named after you, but really just to further our joint understanding about the cosmos, about the universe, about physics, about our place, about how things fit together. And for me, this feeling of collaborative discovery is what makes academia worth it. It's what makes science so enjoyable. And I think I know that when I'm in groups where I can talk to people as much, I do notice the consequences. I'm less productive. I enjoy my work less. Going back to in-person conferences, this can also be captured in remote conferences, but not as well. But going back to conferences, going back to this retreat where I was hearing about a random code I've never even heard of and didn't really think I cared about, and suddenly I do. And this reminds me of why I like being around other scientists so much. Also, we had a bunch of fun conversations about sci-fi, about random TV shows, and a lot of super fun things. And it's great to just be around people who share the passion for science. But there needs to be a Hooper particle, perhaps one involved in the information transfer. We'll see, maybe someday. I honestly feel a bit weird about having some scientific discovery named after me. Just you know, even Cup of Cosmology, I briefly considered naming it like Diana Hooper's talk show. It's just, maybe. Maybe if I ever discover something that could be named after me, I can just call it like the Cup of Cosmology particle, which is would be funny. But yeah, I know today was not. Can I ask if or how much Russia has overwhelmed conversations here the past 4 months? Um, Probably less than you would expect, actually. Obviously, it comes up a lot. The topic of NATO comes up a lot. And it's something that's there, but I wouldn't say it's overtaken every conversation. It does come up a lot, especially in coffee breaks. Someone will always bring it up. There's jokes about it. There's taken over Twitter a lot. But I wouldn't say, from my perspective, that it's become the only topic of conversation. There's a lot of other things that we do talk about as well, but I can only give you the perspective of the limited perspective of being in our nice ivory tower in our remote bubble in academia, because I don't speak to random people in the shops, I don't speak to random people in the street, and I don't really understand the random conversations happening in the shops because I don't yet speak Finnish to the level where I can understand random conversations. I can ask if you I asked the shop assistant something in Finnish yesterday, and I was so proud of myself. I asked her where to find something, like, where is this? And then she answered me in Finnish, and I had no idea what she was saying. It's like, okay, I'm going to switch to English now. Thank you. Anyway, I think it is a big topic, but I wouldn't say it's overtaken every single conversation. So, yeah, I know normally you come to this show to hear about cosmology, about random stuff in the universe, but I think it's important also to focus on the human aspect of science and the process going into doing science and being a scientist. So I hope I didn't bore you all too much with this random off-topic conversation. I know this is not necessarily what you signed up for, but I think it's important to have these conversations and to talk about these things as well. And currently, I despite all of the bad things, despite all of the times you've heard me complain about academia, currently this is where I want to be. And maybe someday that will change. And if it does, then we'll have another cup of cosmology of, hey, here's why I might no longer be committed to science. But that's also fine. And I think we should have more of these conversations. I actually hope someday to do a cup of cosmology episode where I talk to people who have left academia, just to show the idea of here's what you can do outside of academia with a PhD in physics. So that's a stream that I think would be really cool. And I already have like 3 or 4 people in mind as to who I would ask to join me. I might do that one day. So I know this wasn't my usual, here's why the universe is amazing. But I think it's an important conversation to be had, and it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. So just I can leave you with one thought: is that science should be collaborative, and the best science comes from a diverse group of people doing science together, and that's what makes science fun. I disagree. This sort of thing amongst the topic is why live streaming is something I enjoy following. Thank you, David. I know that this is off topic for me, but I also really wanted to do this stream today, and I think it was an important conversation to have. And if anyone here, I know there was the person who asked about doing a bachelor's, a PhD, a master's. If you want to discuss more, you can always reach out to me, contact@cupofcosmology.com. You can always send me a message on Twitter. And while I obviously can't spend hours every week answering everybody with personalized advice, I will always try to make the time to answer people. So if anyone wants to message me for career advice, I am always, always open to that. And I will never say no to that. I might say, like, sorry, I don't have time right now, but you can always message me with questions like that. And I will always give you my personal opinion about that. You could show the CMB just for fun. That reminds me. Thank you for that comment, David. I mean, the CMB is in the logo, so now it does appear every time I start the stream anyway. But we had a very fun thing at the retreat where we all made finished bread. And it was like a flatbread. And we thought we were making the dough from scratch. We weren't. The dough was pre-made. And what we had to do is give it a shape. So we were suddenly in front of a random, like, big lump of bread dough and told, give it a fun shape so that you can distinguish it in the oven. So of course that led to 15 physicists just staring at their bread like, what can I do? What can I do? So of course, I did the very logical and very reasonable thing of making my bread shaped like the plot of the CMB, so the CMB angular power spectrum. So let me see if sharing images here is not so easy. So let me just see if I can figure out how to share images again on the screen here in Restream. And then I will show you 3 images, the last one of which will be the bread that I made. Okay, so let me start with the classic one. To make a flat bread from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Yeah, that was the original quote there. To make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. That one was actually the quote in my master thesis. That was the start of my master thesis. Okay, so we should now have my favorite image up on screen. This is the CMB, the cosmic microwave background radiation, the oldest light in the universe. Now, I'm not going to go into it now because we are at the 1 hour mark and this would take me another 2 hours. Don't get me started on the CMB. But anyway, this is the CMB, the oldest light in the universe. And of course, this is very, very pretty, but this is not the way we do science with it. This is a very pretty picture, but what we normally do is we want to turn this into a plot. Did I just not? No. Still figuring out how to sharing stuff works here. So what we do when we want the CMB is we actually, to study it, we take the CMB angular power spectrum, which is this thing here, which anyone on my stream has seen me show quite often. So when I was asked the other day to make bread, never heard of it. Have you been hiding this from us? Yeah, I don't think I've ever talked about the CMB. Never in any of my streams have I talked about the CMB. We can fix that. If people want to apply for the CMB, I can do a whole stream about the CMB very easily. So anyway, this is the angular power spectrum. So when I was asked the other day to come up with a creative way to shape my bread, of course I did the very, very nerdy thing. And I'm going to show you all the bread I made, because I'm very proud of my bread. So this is my bread. This is my nice Finnish rye bread here. It was ridiculously tasty. I couldn't do the full plot, but hopefully you can identify the first peaks of the CMB. So you have the tail, you have the big plot, and then you have the other 2 plots, the other 2 peaks. So this was my finished bread. I am very proud of my random CMB bread. Someone in the group actually identified it as CMB. Anyway, it was very tasty. I made bread shaped like the CMB. I have no regrets there, and I just felt like I should show you all my CMB bread. That was very much like off topic there, but I was very proud of my random CMB bread, so I just wanted to share that with everyone. Did I miss a comment there? Cosmos. The original Cosmos is a great show. We're not going to get into the one by the person who calls himself a psychoma and then this is science. We're not going to get into that one, but the original Cosmos was amazing. A show that stands up remarkably well, in part, I think, because it is at least as much about the idea of science as specific things. Yeah, the original Cosmos with Carl Sagan is an amazing show, and I really recommend everyone to watch it. I would skip the remake, to be honest, because anything featuring that person just isn't worth watching. But the original with Carl Sagan is absolutely worth watching. Okay, now that I've shown off my random CMB bread, just adding a bit of levity to the whole discussion by showing you that I am an absolute nerd and made my bread shaped like the CMB and I have zero regrets. On that, looks like Machu Picchu mountain in Peru. Yeah, it could easily be any mountain range as well. You know, for me, in my heart, I know it was the CMB. I also had the problem that bits kept breaking off, and then we moved it onto the baking tray, and I had to reshape my CMB. I'm just happy that it looks vaguely identifiable as a CMB, and it was really tasty. So that's what counts, right? So thank you all for joining me on this random digression we went on today about science, about academia, and about why I love being a scientist. Thank you for joining me on this. I know this was off topic. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this show, if you liked what you heard, please do click the subscribe button on YouTube, leave a comment down below, click the like button, share it out to your friends, do all the usual stuff you do on YouTube. I am building up the YouTube channel more now, so every subscription matters. Is it 1.1 millimeters thick? No, I couldn't really choose the thickness. We were given a specific amount. Once I had the shape, the thickness was kind of determined, unfortunately. But yeah, so yeah, please do help me get the YouTube channel to grow. I think I'm like 20 subscribers away from being able to customize the URL. So please do subscribe. I'm still not in the habit of asking people to do that, but now that I am focusing on YouTube, it has to happen. Also, if any of you want to support me, thank you so much. I know a few of you have already started doing monthly donations to me on Ko-fi. Thank you. Really, I do appreciate it. In the YouTube link down below, you should find a link to Ko-fi. You should find I'm on Ko-fi, DC Hooper 91 on Ko-fi. If anyone wants to buy me a coffee, thank you. I really, really do appreciate it. I've been a little occupied for asking questions. Well, thank you for joining, Abyss. I do really appreciate having you here. So next Sunday, I will most likely not be online because I'm super excited. Actually, on Wednesday, I am traveling to London to watch Hamilton the musical. Super excited about this. Really, really looking forward to this. Cannot wait for it. And then on Thursday, my amazing mother is coming over to Helsinki, and we're going to spend 4 or 5 days exploring Helsinki, eating a lot of cinnamon buns, and doing absolutely no work. So I most likely will not be online next Sunday unless we decide to do a random episode of the super duper hooper show. I think that's what we called it. Anyway, we might be doing a random episode of that, still not clear. But in any case, Cup of Cosmology will not be online next Sunday. I hope to be online the Sunday after that, which by then I believe is like into June somehow. It's already almost June. Wow. Scary. Don't want to think about things coming up in September, but I won't be online next Sunday. I will be taking a very much well-deserved and necessary break. So I won't be online next Sunday, but I will be back the week after. And as always, if you want to get in touch with me, the email address is contact@cupofcosmology.com. Super duper hooper trooper show. Was there a trooper in there? Then we'll start singing ABBA, like the super trooper. Anyway, at that point, once I break into ABBA songs, that's when I know it's been a long day. Thank you everyone for joining. This has been great fun. As always, you can email me, contact@cupofcosmology.com. You can DM me on Twitter. If you want to rant about academia with me, feel free to reach out. If you want to talk about all the cool things in academia, science, whatever, you can always reach out to me. I hope to see you all again not next Sunday, in 2 weeks. And I hope in the meantime you'll stay safe.